Hi everyone, this is Norman Kochnick here for Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. I just came off a session a short while ago with Priti Upala, who's in Las Vegas, enjoying herself in a lovely pool surroundings in her own cabana. She sounded very impressed. Now I've got Chris Vernon with me, and he's not in a cabana in Las Vegas. He's actually in a stronghold, probably underground in some igloo in
an igloo. Yeah, just in the West Wing. This obviously the servants are making noise, making breakfast, preparing our eggs and bacon for breakfast. So just thought I'd get in the quiet end. So
the West Wing, you reckon? Okay.
Yeah, the smaller West Wing is too.
Now the reality is that it's a time of the day where it's rather early for some, especially in places like England. And then in India, it is also still very early. They're pushing what I think it's now roughly 8:45, going on 9 there.
Yeah, I'd rather it was that time than 3:26 in the morning is here. So hence why I'm not always full of the joys of spring, especially seeing your glowing face, Norman. However,
glowing shirt, at least
these wake ups were decidedly easier last week when England were winning the Test match. I don't know if that's anything to do with it, but I've been a bit more struggled this week. So,
what do you make of the press today, or it may have been overnight, of Michael Vaughan about the pitch, and then Shane Warne?
Yeah, so I've made a few comments myself this week, and I was actually thinking about what I meant by my comments, because people in the chat have been disagreeing. Or what I'll say on Wicket is this: I think what I meant to get across, and I don't think I did articulate it properly. Do I think this is a great cricket Test match wicket? No, I'm not whining. People say what I mean by it is, should pitches in India deteriorate and spin? Absolutely, 100% agree. My point is, when does it start doing it? If it starts on end of day 2, start of day 3, that's brilliant. I think if it starts from the third over and the ball's going through the top, I think that's when. Does that make sense? So I think that it's just when does the pitch start deteriorating? I'd like to see a day and a half, 2 days of more batter friendly or seamer friendly conditions, then it starts to deteriorate. And I think that's what Michael Vaughan's saying. I have no issues with India having spinning wickets. I think that it's a good thing. It's just after 2 overs on the first day, they've got a spinner on and it's exploding through the top. I think that's just too early. And that's where the comments about the pitch, I think, come in. And I think Michael Vaughan, Mark Waugh came out and said that he didn't think the pitch was great. Probably coming from, I know people touch on green wickets in England. Well, if you take, that's as much to do with the balls and the overhead conditions as much as the pitch. And if you actually look at Test match results on those sort of wickets, you find that they tend to be more even between bat and ball. There might be 500-600 scored, but you tend to see 300 played, 320 played, 280 played, 285 or played 200. So there's a much closer game between bat and ball. But I think the point of the pitch is that people aren't concerned about it breaking up and spinning. It's just how quickly it does it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. Look, there's one fellow called Vasant Narayan. He's given us a lot of questions, and one was particularly about the pitch preparations. But can I just take you back to a time in cricket when we had such a thing as uncovered pitches? When it was limitless days of a test, uncovered pitches, balls would roll. In some cases, they would bounce wildly. They would deviate left and right. And you had a man by the name of Don Bradman, who actually had faced the bumper era, the Bodyline series. There's a lot to be said about the capabilities of people in that time. And we argue now, like Rohit Sharma got 161, Ashwin with his century. You're right about adaptability, but can you imagine playing at a time when it would rain at a certain stage of the match, and then just when they felt appropriate, they would start the game again and have a diabolical pitch, quite frankly. Well, I don't think we can comprehend how bad it can get. I know it's different standards, different conditions now.
Yeah.
But it is an intriguing thing to compare, isn't it?
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's different eras. It's like trying to compare chalk and cheese, really. I think, and FS in the comments, he seems to be a regular viewer, so always happy to see FS. And I think a few people kept saying that me and the Poms, we're crying about the wicket. I don't think we're crying about it at all. I think we're just making the point, and all the point is it would be nice to maybe see a slightly longer combat, batting friendly conditions. I'm not saying it should be bowler friendly. I'm saying just a bit longer. And to be fair, in this test, if it had been, India might have scored even more runs, and England might be even more under the pressure. So, but no, uncovered wickets. It's just a different time, isn't it? It's hard to compare because I certainly wasn't born when that sort of went at the game. So I mean, I guess when you go and look at it, there must even bigger kudos to Bradman, but at the same time, would Don Bradman, when you see some footage about his technique, and would Don Bradman have scored all of his runs if he'd played in the game today? And I'm not saying he wouldn't have done. There's every chance that he would have done well, but would he have averaged 100? The chances are probably not, just because no one's ever done it again, and no one will ever do it. No one will ever do it again. So it would be interesting to see how he goes. How would Fred Truman go bowling on pitches that are covered, are slightly flatter a majority of the time? How would those guys fare? How would Jack Hobbs go? How would W.G. Grace go? It's a really interesting thought, and because you don't know, it's just impossible to come to that comparison, isn't it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Freddie Truman. I actually just happened to be watching I watched a lot of the old classics on YouTube, and I was watching him bowl, I think it was 63, 64 to the West Indians, and they had a great side then. They had Worrell and Sobers and the like. And
Worrell, Weeks, and 3 Ws, wasn't it?
Yeah. Weeks, Worrell, and what was the third? Can't remember the third.
John will tell us in the comments, I'm sure.
Yeah. The reality was that his bowling was superb. He bowled a variety of deliveries. He used different parts of the crease, not unlike what Monty said. He got the ball to come in and cut away. He was very stump to stump, and he had a lot of people bowled, and some incredible people like the likes of Sobers, and they were getting out to balls that were quite unplayable. And I don't know whether it was the wicket at all. I think he was a very, very much exceptional bowler.
Oh, he's one of the greatest, and Bob Willis and Ian Botham, taking out the modern guys, Broad Anderson. But if you've ever heard him interviewed, Fred Truman, he's a proper Northern Yorkshireman. He's exactly. Hard as it ate grit for breakfast. Sort of that, just no nonsense, fire in your belly, and by all accounts, what a fantastic. They said that he was ambidextrous with his arms. He could throw the ball in flat and hard from the boundary with his right arm and his left arm. Like he didn't have any different in terms of he could do both at the same sort of intensity and power. And you just think stuff like that. If that was in the modern game with the IPL and the shorter formats of the game and how important fielding is, imagine having someone like that now who could pick the ball up with both arms and throw it flat in over the top of the stumps from 50 metres.
There's been a few comments. Nipu Mani has said, do you think the only way to bat on this track is attack? I think you certainly need to be in the proactive side. You have to be out of your crease to reach the pitch of the ball, and I think you'll have a lot more success. If you just wait for it to come, you're going to be diabolically caught somewhere. They're saying also Vabhav Sahu has actually said that Ashwin is #1 batsman of the world, in his opinion. Well, he certainly is in terms of what happened yesterday, in terms of the conditions, maybe. But to say he's #1 in the world, he'd have to bat higher in the order, I think, to prove that. But he's
slightly tenuous, but we'll let him have him for a minute, yeah.
But he was number 8. He's batting at number 8, and he's to score a century.
Yeah, I think
7 or 8. 7, I think he was.
I think that he's a decent, a good 8 and an okay 7 generally, isn't he? I know he's got 4 or 5 Test hundreds now, but he's played nearly 80 tests, so he's probably a very good number 8, isn't he? If you actually looked at where you would want him in your order, you wouldn't necessarily want him batting at 7 in all conditions in Australia, in England, in South Africa. In India, he probably can get away with batting at 7, and he's a fine player. I think he's a brilliant player, but he's probably a good 8/okay 7 generally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But so just on that, in that context, the best, and I haven't got the name on the top of my tongue there, the best number 8 batter in the world at the moment is?
Well, I'd probably be Ashwin if you want him to bat at 8, yeah. Jadeja, if Jadeja bats at that slot. There's a case for Moeen Ali, when he's been in, not at the moment, I think he's out of form, but, when he was at the peak of his powers for England, he's got 6 or 7 Test hundreds. So you could say that of people playing them, Moeen Ali would be close, but Pat Cummins bats 8 for Australia.
But Cummins hasn't scored any centuries.
No, exactly, but he's certainly capable. There's bound to be New Zealand's Mitch Santner, probably bats 8 for New Zealand.
Jason Holder, actually. Jason Holder.
Yeah, there's a few good players about. So, I would say that probably on form at the peak of your powers, that Ashwin and Moeen Ali are probably as close to a proper bat. So I'd probably say Moeen Ali just because he's opened the batting in Test cricket and one-day cricket and scored runs. So, Ashwin at the moment in form has to be probably the best spinning all-rounder in the world, isn't he? I think it's very difficult to compare bowling and batting all-rounders, spinning all-rounders and seaming all-rounders.
It's funny, I've never heard the term spinning all-rounder. That's a new one to me.
Never, right, but in terms of people saying this, I saw on social media, who's better, Stokes or Ashwin, and it's an impossible thing to compare because they're not taking up the same slot in a side, are they? In that all-rounder slot, Stokes is a top order batter that can bowl, and Ashwin's a frontline bowler that can bat. So it's a difficult one to compare and contrast to.
So Mohit Kumar is saying good morning to you and I. Sai Krishna is actually asking the question whether you're a batter or a bowler. You're a batter, aren't you? Opening
bat, and I can bowl. Yeah, I would say I'm a poor man's. I was going to say James Anderson, but I think that'd be doing. I'm a seam bowler. I'm not quick, but I can swing it. And in England with the Duke's ball, I can be. And Norman played in a game where I got 3 or 4 wickets just because I could run in, and it was a green wicket, as I'm sure the Indian fans would love to hear.
Sloping green wicket. It's a bit of a dodge.
And it swung about a bit, and I think I had 1 quarter slip, an LBW, and 2 bowled or something. So I was pleased with that. But I'm an opening bat by trade, I guess. So I actually played. Simon Willis is one of my coaches growing up, playing at Kent on the academy. So when he's on, we have a bit of banter occasionally about previous games, and that's good.
How did I go that day? I fell over when I ran between wickets. I remember that.
I don't think you contributed too much, Norman. I think that the MCC had a fine victory in typical English conditions. I think that would be fair to say.
I do remember, who was it? Craig Ruth getting, I think, second ball, your so-called IPL player calling the boundary for a big fat duck.
I can't remember. I captained that game as well, so I probably should remember. But
you should remember more. You remembered your bowling, that's for sure. You just said you're bowling very well.
As and rightly so. It's not very often I get 3 wickets, so I've got to remember it when it comes along. But no, I remember it being 180 played 150, something like that. So as all the guys would say, that's a proper pitch in English conditions.
Exactly. Nilakshi Sharma's online. She says hi.
Hi, Nilakshi. She's asked me where my hat is, and I was getting fed up. I mean, we're in lockdown and the hairdressers are shut, so I'll be out for a haircut soon, and the hat won't be about anymore. So, but it's always nice to see her in the comments, and hopefully we'll get her back on the show at some point potentially, won't we?
Well, that's what I was about to say, whether we should bring Nilakshi. There's a Rahul Wakade who's also asking. We might consider that because that's very interesting to bring people into play. So, guys, let us know your nomination. Give us some of your details.
Possibly with the IPL in mind, it could be, depending on the day, it could be a winning get a fan on. From if it's Chennai versus Bangalore,
they must be a true fan of that club.
Yeah. You could get one of each. It could be us 2 and a fan on, and we can have that because although we know the IPL and we love it, they're going to be certainly more passionate or know more detail about some of the players, especially the homegrown ones. So that could be an interesting one to look at.
Well, what we might do is we might get a fan from each of the clubs listening over them. We get a fan from each of the clubs to be wearing their colours, maybe some flags and streamers or decorations behind them of their club. And I will certainly bring you with Chris on our IPL programs, which will be happening. We're actually going to record some later today and in the ensuing weeks as well. So if you're a fan of a specific club, I've heard that Kings 11 Punjab have renamed themselves Punjab Kings. Did you see that?
I've not seen that.
That's news I heard this morning. I saw it on Sports Today with Buria that they're calling themselves Punjab Kings, which is a change to their name, which is interesting. Okay, all right. Let's go back to today's match. We've got clearly a situation where India are chomping at the bit to get out there and take the wickets. Chris was wondering why I was going to bring our evening show an hour earlier. Well, I think because we're not going to be playing that long, to be honest with you. I'd be very surprised if England lasts more than 2 sessions, to be honest. And that's not being, cheeky. It's probably the way that you have to understand it. You'd like to see some of the England batters like Folkes and Root and perhaps Pope bat well enough so they can actually last most of the day, but we can't really see that. So the question for Pratik is, if India fail to win this series 3-1, what would be the scenario for the WTC final? We're seeing Australia versus New Zealand in the final. That's the way it's going to be. I'm not sure the next series between England and India in England will have any impact. Will it, Chris?
No, I think it's before. I think the World Test Championships before that series. So
right.
I think in probably fairness of I don't know what the best. If it's a final in England, and the majority of our fans are going to hate me saying this, but I don't think India would be a favourite against any of those sides to win a one-off Test match in England, just because of the conditions of the pitch and the way that the overhead Duke's ball could go. I mean, if you look at who the opponents would be, and India's seam bowling would certainly match up. You've got Sharma, Bumrah, Shami, even Siraj as well. But, batting wise against, New Zealand's bowling attack would be Bolt, Southey, Jameson and Wagner. Aussies would have 4 seamers, would have 4 good seamers. So if India do get to that final, and I hope they don't, just because it means we'll lose this series 3-1, it would be really tough for them. And if they actually came out with that in that test of a win, then that would have been against the odds, I would say, because I don't see them being a favourite against in Australia, us or New Zealand, just because of the conditions, if that makes sense.
So New Zealand is definitely
there.
As one was saying, that they're one team for sure.
Yeah.
And there can only be either India, Australia or England.
I think we get knocked out. If we lose this test, which we're going to, I think then that makes us can't qualify. So it's then India or Australia.
Oh, really?
I think we had to win 4-0, 3-1 or 2-0, something like that. I think that's the only way we got through. So.
Right, okay. So that allows India to have the opportunity to do so. I mean, I'm Australian. I live in Australia. I do love Australia, but I feel rather awkward if they do play the final. I would like to see, in my opinion, New Zealand play India, but that's just me.
I don't know how they're going to work the next one. People were saying that it's unfair that it's in England, the final. I guess what they would do, and the only fair way to do it would be that it has to be at Lord's. Let's face it, the first World Test Championship as a cricket, if you're going to pick a ground to have it, it has to be Lord's, just as the most famous, most prestigious cricket ground in the world. I would assume that what they might say is whoever wins the World Test Championship, the next one, the final, will be in their country. So if New Zealand win, it will be at Christchurch or Auckland or Dunedin, wherever it might be. If Australia win it, it can be at the SCG. If India win it, the final could be at Chennai, or if that makes sense. That seems a fair way of doing it, or just have a random draw. I don't see it being at Lord's every time. So,
no. How frequently is it going to be?
I don't know. I'm still not sure if I'm a massive fan of it, just because I think even if you look at some of the series, England haven't played some series. There are some 2-match series, some 4-match series, and I think they need to just iron out how to make it work a bit better, if that makes sense. Because England are still playing way more tests. The big three, if you like, are still playing a lot more Test cricket than the West Indies or Sri Lanka. Maybe you could have 2 tiers of it. Maybe you could have a top 8 in the world and a bottom 8. So you could bring Ireland into it. You could bring Afghanistan into it. You could bring the lesser cricketing nations to play Test cricket, and then have a promotion and relegation system. Maybe you could have a 2 divisions. So 2 go out of the top tier. So it might be at the time, it might be a West Indies and a Bangladesh get relegated, or Zimbabwe. But then that allows an Ireland or an Oman or an Afghanistan to come in and play against all the sides in the world for a 2-year period. And maybe that's the way that they can improve Test cricket worldwide. And that's just an idea.
I think it's good. Rahul Wakade is living in Delhi, the Delhi capitals. He's a Delhi fan. I've just given you the first tick as a person, but Rahul, if you want to be a part of it, you've got to send me your email address and also provide me with a photo in your email. I will reply and you can reply back. And I want to see a photograph with you with the clothing. I want to make sure you're wearing the clothing because you won't be on unless you show me full regalia, so to speak, of the team. So Rahul, you're in. So just send me your email address, this message, and we'll be able to do that live. We'll get you involved. All right. So this Nipu Money's saying that there's a dependency on Ashwin. Can it backfire an but of course it can. If they think that he's going to win them every single test, I don't think that's going to be the case. In fact, if it's a non-spinning wicket, he will probably not be as effective.
Yeah, as he's shown abroad, he came to England and got dropped, I think, for Jadeja. But that's the case with, I get what he means, dependency Ashwin, but look at all the sides in the world. They rely on their best cricketers. England in the 80s relied on Ian Botham. England now in England, Jimmy Anderson. It's Pat Cummins, or Jack Callis for South Africa batting wise, or Alistair Cook for England and India. The best, all the sides rely on their best players, don't they? And I think Nipu's point about the third or fourth test in Ahmedabad, no one really knows what sort of the wicket is going to be or what it's going to do. So it's going to be an interesting test just to see how it's going to play out. Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me, Fabhav Sahu. I'm not really sure I'm saying it properly. And Mr. Sahu, you actually have just said if it's a draw, who goes through? Well, it'll be Australia.
Yeah.
It'll be Australia versus New Zealand if it's a drawn series. So that'll be disastrous for both England and, for that matter, India if there's a drawn series. All right. Just a bit more on today. We've got England. They've got both Root in bat, and who's with him? It's in fact
Lawrence.
Lawrence and Root are both in bat. Lawrence's attitude yesterday was pretty commendable. He was certainly on the attack, which I think may be a necessary thing. Root, this is probably a fairly significant partnership. I know they've still got Stokes, Pope, and Folkes to go, which is also pretty meaty middle order. But I think this partnership will be relatively important. I actually, when I just rattle off those names, they aren't that bad at 4-5 batting, are they? Really?
No. I think England's side at the moment it's the last year and a half they've been very good. I know they didn't win a series in New Zealand, but that's pretty tough, and we probably didn't get the makeup of our side right there. But the England side is coming together. Quite a young side, apart from a couple of the bowlers, but they're still doing very well. But there's a lot, with Anderson and Broad potentially at the twilight of their careers. They're not in the early stages. There's still some really good youngsters coming through. Guys that if you think Ollie Stone probably at the moment is playing in this test and done well, he's probably still in England against India. He's probably still our 7th or 8th first choice seamer. If we actually look at who would play in front of him in a test match in England, he's probably 6th or 7th on the list. So that shows how good our sort of seam bowling stock is at the moment in this country. So, and batting wise, there's some very fine cricketers in there, and they can't be judged on this test match or this series. They can be judged on a series more, but this test match alone on this wicket, it's going to be tough for everyone. And, Ben Stokes, Joe Root have proved themselves as mighty fine test match cricketers. Ollie Pope's on his way to doing it. I'd love to see more of Ben Folkes play, just because he's proving himself already. He's getting a lot of talk in the media and the press this week from all over the world about how good his keeping is. I honestly think, take out Joe Root, he's probably our best batsman in spinning conditions. So I'd love to see him play more.
So would you bring Butler back as a batter if Ben Folkes continues as a keeper?
The problem is who do you drop? If Butler came in, you'd have to get rid of a batter. Like you'd have to get rid of Root. Well, we obviously don't get rid of Root. You have to get rid of an Ollie Pope or Zach Crawley / Dan. Say Zach Crawley because you're about 3, or maybe a Don Burns and a Rory Burns. So I don't know where Butler would bat if he doesn't. Does that make sense? Okay. I don't think you can get them both in. So
Vabhav Sahu's asking a left field question now. Do I like it, or you love Indian food? There's no doubt I love Indian food. Again, only 2 days ago, I was at a whole bevy of restaurants, from a Sri Lankan opening restaurant called Kotu. I went then to a Pakistan Australian conference, or what was it called? Like a election. They had great Pakistani food. Then I follow with Indian food. So yeah, well, I certainly do. Do you like Indian food, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a curry on Saturday. There's a new Indian restaurant in our local town, and I had an achar chicken, I think it's called, and I was recommended. I'd never heard of it before. An achar chicken. Sorry for the pronunciation. It's really nice. It's something that I don't have as much as maybe a Chinese food over here is big, and that's probably my favorite. But curry wise, I love it. I quite like spicy food, so a chicken madras or quite like a fish curry as well, which I'm sure a lot of the Indian fans would like to hear. Whether it be a white fish curry or a king prawn curry, I'm certainly a fan. And who doesn't like poppadoms and the stuff that comes with it? So,
I've actually, there's a girl that I know very well who's in Sri Lanka, who is going to come on one of my programs. Who's an incredible cook or chef, and her name's Harindra, and very, very beautiful girl as well, lovely lady. She's actually going to host. I'm just getting a hold of her now. See if she's around. Harindra Madushi. Now, Harindra is going to go to some of the best Sri Lankan areas, not necessarily only restaurants, but what they call short eats locations or rest houses where they've got amazing food. And I'm going to get her to go there and tease us all one day. And we should do the same thing with India as well. We should do the same thing with a whole host of places, which I'm doing with Australia. I've had one on the Doyle's restaurant here not long ago. I was at Masala Theory, which is an Indian restaurant here in Surrey Hills in Sydney, with Pretty Upala the other day as well. So let's do that. Let's make it interesting. Not just, certainly cricket's the theme, but bring other aspects of culture into play. I would love to do that. In fact, I'd love to have be taken into a typical Indian home, go through their meal, have a chat with a fan there. Perhaps we'll do it with the IPL. Let's how about that?
Yeah,
Chris, that'd be a great idea.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'm keen. We've got a couple of questions, and because only a couple of Sai Krishna's mentioned a few times, so we'll touch on that. But Mastermind, it said ICC laws on definition of a poor pitch are biased. They deem a pitch that spins square on day one as poor, but does not say the same for green tops that swing and sing from day one. I understand what he means, but you've got to work out pitch preparation. England could produce those wickets, if they dry it or they cut it more. You can't odds if a pitch swings. It's not nothing to do with the pitch. If it swings, that's overhead conditions, the balls, and the quality of the bowlers more. And I know I'm English and I could be seen as biased, and I don't think I am. I generally think that green wickets that seam a bit to start with and then flatten out offer the best test match wickets. If you look at some of the test matches in England in recent years, the West Indies chased 350, we chased 360, both at Headingley, which everyone would consider a green top wicket. But if it's a green wicket for a couple of sessions and then flattens out, and you get a 5-day test match where everyone scores 300, 350, I actually think that's the best cricket that you could have. And look at the series in Australia recently. You had the last day at the Gabba where it was a green wicket or did a bit the first day or two and then flattens out. And I think that's really good for cricket. So I get the laws, but I don't think they're biased. I think that they make sense in that respect. And then Sai Krishna at Norman, can we discuss this? Chris, in the last series, although India lost 4-1 in England, we gave tough competition for all the games except one. I think Sam Curran is the X factor in that series. There was. I watched a lot of that series. It flattered England the 4-1. There's no doubt that England deserved to win the test. Without a doubt, England deserved to win the series, probably 3-2. And Sam Curran, that's the point, I think, when it comes into similar to Ashwin or bowlers and their conditions. Sam Curran playing in this series probably would have no effect, probably would be, ineffective with his bowling, as seen in Sri Lanka. But in England, he does swing it. He pitches the ball up and can score some useful runs. So, I honestly think that England will win quite comfortably this series at home against India as well. I think they're playing at the peak of their powers, and I know that India won in Australia, but you're probably looking at an Australian side a little bit short of that X factor, or a bit short of confidence at the moment. And India play very well. I don't see them. I could see them maybe getting close in a 2 or 3 match series in England, but not many sides beating England in a 5 match series over here, and they'll be playing full strength. They'll have Broad, Anderson, Archer, and the batting looks in pretty good order at the moment. You know, there's some question marks over I keep saying Don Burns, over Rory Burns at the top, but apart from that, England's side's looking pretty settled. So I could see England winning 3-1 easily over here this summer against India.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about Australia and X factors. There's a lot of discussion in the press today and even yesterday about Glenn Maxwell yet again and him wanting to play Test cricket. It's funny because most of that media comes from Glenn Maxwell himself. No one else is mentioning it. It's coming out of Glenn Maxwell's mouth, which is intriguing, which almost answers the question. It's up to him. If he's good enough and he performs well enough, he'll be in any side, but he can't even crack the IPL properly at the moment, can he? He's on the...
No, and I think a couple of people are saying that Australia were full strength and didn't have the X factor. I'm not saying in terms of a player. I'm saying in terms of that team spirit or that sort of guts. And I think that's what England have got at the moment. Is they've got a bit of balls about them, to want of a better expression. They've got a bit of fire in the belly, and they're competing. And it just looked like Australia didn't quite have that, that extra 10% in them that India had and that England had in that first test here. So. Another comment just saying from Sai again, saying, given that Jadeja and Ashwin are in good form, I think it'll be 3-2. I get your point, Sai, but I don't think they'll both play in England. I'd be very surprised if India play 2 spinners. They'll play 3. They'll probably play Hardik, Pandya, and 3 other seamers, won't they? So, I mean, it is in August, it is late summer, so they might play 2 spinners, but historically, you don't play 2 spinners in England very often, apart from maybe at the Oval. So.
Could I just make a shout out to all the people that are making comments, which they're great. Yeah. We really, really appreciate it. Chris Vernon has a Twitter handle called @VERN158, @Vern158, and mine is @NormKoch, NORMKOCH. We're both on Twitter. I'm not seeing some of these names here necessarily translated to Twitter. I'm wondering whether you guys have got Twitter accounts. If you do, please contact us, like the likes of who there and Sai will get you on, or Mastermind get you on, and Shidon will get you on. All these guys I'm putting up on screen now. We want you to make it. I want to see your names up on our system. Okay, there's one there. There's quite a few. Obviously, we're going to have Sahu's going to be on there. And again, I'm just going to go quickly up. One other quick question about Chahal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he should be?
He's actually I think it's interesting. It's always the conversation of wrist spinners. Can they contain in Test cricket? He's obviously, I think he has played a bit of Test cricket, but he's been certainly for Royal Challengers the last few years, he's been one of the best bowlers in the IPL. So, it really is interesting going into this third Test what the Indians would do. And I was sat there thinking last night what England might do with their side. And as I said, I don't think Broad and Anderson will play together. It will be Bess or Ali. I would probably stick with Moeen. I think that although he didn't bowl great in this Test, he started to show a bit more consistency in the second innings. I know that Ashwin got after him a bit, but he started to look a bit more consistent. And they might change the top of the order. Bess, they'll be back for the third Test. Crawley will be back. And I wonder if, given the form of Rory Burns, whether they might bring Bairstow in to open the batting or bat Crawley at the top and Bairstow bats 3. I think they might make a change at the top, but I wouldn't.
So you're saying Bairstow's he's returning to the squad?
I don't think we've named our squad yet for the last 2 Tests, but
okay.
I think when he was left out of the first 2 Tests, they made a point saying that he's been rested for the first 2 Tests, which suggests that he will be back in contention for the last 2.
All right, I've got Rahul Karadia on the screen there. He's living in Delhi. He's a fan of Delhi Capital. Well, that man will be the Delhi Capital fan on our show when that comes up in the near future. If you are a significant fan of any of the 8 clubs or 8 teams in the IPL, send us a message. Now, we're going to make it. This is the way it's going to happen. We're going to, like Rahul here, the other 7 teams, you're going to have to get onto our Twitter handle. I'm only going to accept the person that actually goes on our Twitter handle and this page, of course, as well. I would like you to announce that you would like to be a fan on screen and give us a bit of detail, your email address and details. We'll be able to connect with you and potentially get you onto those shows. And you've got to wear the outfit of the clothing. If you decorate the wall or whatever, that would be even better. So please, there were 7 other teams. So Rahul's the first cab off the rank from the Delhi Capitals. I think Nalakshi might be the other. We might already, or depending on what team she decides, that I'm not sure who she's going for. But if you want to be on it, you've got to let me know, and Chris and I know, via our Twitter handles at Vern, VERN158, or mine is at Norm Koch, NORMKOCH. That's the way to contact us. We'd like you to do that. So Rahul, drop us a line. Okay. I think we're pretty close to the time of the
It's now
3 o'clock, actually, my time, which is time for the game to start. Just quickly, when's India going to win this test?
I would assume probably by tea. I would have thought. Yeah, I would say that if England bat 2 sessions, they'd probably be quite happy. If we can bat to the close, I think that it's almost. I think it would deflate India a little bit, just because I don't think they'll want to give England any batters chance in the middle. You know, if we can bat a day, that gives our middle order a whole day facing Ashwin, facing Patel, and that's only going to leave them in good stead. But realistically, I think that by tea time, I think we'll probably have a result.
I'm actually thinking, I think by tea time as well, I would argue we'll be having an early evening session. So our evening review of both the day and probably the match will happen a bit earlier, guys, so watch out for that notification. I've also got a specific interview with Kritika Naidu, who's from the Crick Buzz. She's going to join me separately as well tonight. All right, everyone, that's our broadcast for today. Thank you very much. Go and watch the game live. I want to do that. I'm going to do a bit of eating as well. So thanks, Chris.
Indian food, I hope.
Sorry?
Indian food, I hope.
Oh, no, this is actually a salami and cheese sandwich. That was not Indian at all. In fact, I've also got a...
Isn't it called bologna in Australia? Bolognas and gherkins.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I really do sincerely love having you all. Love chatting with you, interacting greatly. So view, like, and share the posts. Most importantly, subscribe if you haven't already. Some 85% of the people that view this channel don't subscribe, which is outrageous. So, I mean, if you're willing to watch the show, you should then subscribe. It just makes it easier. And also on top of that, we'll make sure we comment on everything that we see and talk about. So thanks, everyone.
I enjoyed the slightly more interactive going through the questions. I think, and a couple of them we maybe haven't quite done, but as we're getting more viewers, then it's something maybe we could do even on the Aussie and the Pom. If we've got people watching, there's no reason why we can't have a question and answer. I think that's good. I've really enjoyed this morning.
So have I. And again, we've got those Twitter handles. Don't forget, you can see Chris's is there. Point to your screen, Chris.
Yeah.
At Vern158, and mine's not there, but it's at Norm, as an NORM, Koch, KOCH, all one word. All right, guys, enjoy the game. All the best. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers, Norman.
Bye-bye.
Bye.